Nothing on earth can hold me.
There's always another dimension if our eyes are open, if our hearts are open to receive it. Science can only study the atom. It cannot become the atom.
Rise, O my soul, in freedom.
Well, the question then is, who am I? That's the question we all must face. Just to get Christy off the hook, I thought to say, I've got a chronic cough that I've got to keep under control, and we thought this sort of visiting ministers mode would be the best way to do it. So thank you, Christy. That was fun. There was a great guru who knew his students pretty well. And he had one student who was a very earnest scholar. And he thought, well, maybe today is the day we start our training with this particular fellow. And he said to him, let's see what he said to him. He said that he had found something really important beyond a scriptural understanding, and he wanted to convey that to this student. So the student said, great, let's get going. And so he said, what I want you to do is go outside, stand in the rain, put your hands up, and look up into the skies. It was his guru. He said yes. He went outside and took that posture, stayed there for a while, came back in, and the guru said, so what do you think? And he said, I'm freezing, I'm soaked, and I feel like a fool. And the guru said, that's pretty good for the first day. And this is what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about. What is it that really leads us to spiritual understanding? Certainly, we see all around us the result of intellectual understanding. This beautiful temple was built through an understanding. Well, there was also the great inspiration, but through an understanding of architecture and how to create a space that would lift us in this extraordinary way. All the bridges you see, all the tunnels we have, all the incredible cultural things are all the result of thinking to a large extent. But when it comes to the spiritual path, it's just not the main route. It's the beginning. It's where most of us start. We read a lot of books. We're searching. And then we find this one, the autobiography of a yogi. And for many, the search has ended because we find other doors opening. Swami said an interesting thing. He often would, Swami Kriyananda, he often would just state little pithy truths in such sweet ways. He said, science can only study the atom. It cannot become the atom. And that's our journey, is attuning ourselves to the true reality, to the deepest understanding of what in the world is this place that we are in. And why do we have such a longing for something else? There's got to be more. Don't we all say that? There's got to be more than this. And this is when we have to tune into a different mode of understanding. We have to have an experience of something beyond what we understand. It's so perfectly recognized when you go on pilgrimage. I know I've shared this story before, but it was one of the most uplifting and transforming experiences for me. I always love the story of Master Yogananda when he was told to go to America. He got the message from God inwardly, but he wanted confirmation because it was such an extraordinary request. It was so out of the blue. He just really wanted confirmation. And he prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed in this room in his house. And I want to read this story to you and then share with you my experience of being in that room. As I went about, this is Yogananda speaking in Autobiography of a Yogi. As I went about my preparations to leave Master and my native land for the unknown shores of America, I experienced not a little trepidation. I had heard many stories about the materialistic Western atmosphere, one very different from the spiritual background of India, pervaded by the centuried auras of saints. An Oriental teacher who will dare the Western airs, I thought, must be hardy beyond the trials of any Himalayan cold. One morning I began to pray, with an adamant determination to continue to even die praying until I heard the voice of God. I wanted his blessing and assurance that I would not lose myself in the fogs of modern utilitarianism. My heart was set to go to America, but even so strongly was it resolved to hear the solace of divine permission. I prayed and prayed, muffling my sobs. No answer came. My silent petition increased in excruciating crescendo until at noon I had a zenith. My brain could no longer withstand the pressure of my agonies. If I cried once more with an increased depth of my inner passion, I felt as though my brain would split. At that moment, there came a knock outside the vestibule adjoining the Gurpar Road room in which I was sitting. Opening the door, I saw a young man in the scanty garb of a renunciate. He came in, closed the door behind him, and refusing my request to sit down, indicated with a gesture that he wished to talk to me while standing. He must be Babaji, I thought, dazed, because the man before me had the features of a younger Lahiri Mahashaya. He answered my thought, "Yes, I am Babaji." He spoke melodiously in Hindi. "Our Heavenly Father has heard your prayer. He commands me to tell you, follow the behest of your Guru and go to America. Fear not, you will be protected." After a vibrant pause, Babaji addressed me again. "You are the one I have chosen to spread the message of Kriya Yoga in the West. Long ago I met your Guru Yukteswar at the Kumala Mela, and he told me I would send you to him for training." I was speechless, choked with devotional awe at his presence, and deeply touched to hear from his own lips that he had guided me to Yukteswar. With a majestic power in his gaze, the master electrified me by a glimpse of his cosmic consciousness. In a short while, he started toward the door. "Do not follow me," he said. "You will not be able to do so. Please, Babaji, don't go away. Take me with you." Looking back, he replied, "Not now, some other time." Overcome by emotion, I disregarded his warning. As I tried to pursue him, I discovered that my feet were firmly rooted to the floor. From the door, Babaji gave me a last affectionate glance. He raised his hand by way of benediction and walked away, my eyes fixed on him lovingly. sitting in that room and knowing what had taken place there, and knowing also that the vibrations of an avatar in a space remain. It was just an absolutely extraordinary experience for me, sitting in that room. I can still feel the presence of Babaji in that room. This is what we're looking for. We're not looking for intellectual understanding. It's satisfying in its way, but it doesn't take us out of this world, and it doesn't take us back to where we came from. It doesn't answer the question, who am I? We need to find it another way. And so we don't throw the thinking out, not at all. In fact, talking about interesting ideas is part of the culture of Ananda. It's always so much fun to go out with a group and have conversations. Swami used to say he would take people out a lot for meals and just good company. And he'd say it was so interesting to him how many tables in a restaurant people were talking about nothing. And Ananda always got itself engaged in really interesting conversations about all kinds of subjects. There's a lovely story about a devotee that came to a guru, and he was full of devotion, and he was very interested in learning the teachings. What the master asked him to do as his seva was to bring the firewood into the ashram to keep everybody warm. And so, of course, he did as his guru asked. And he brought that firewood in, and years and years and years passed, and he brought that firewood in. And more years passed, decades perhaps, and he brought that firewood in. And one day, as he was releasing the firewood beside the pile inside, he noticed a piece of white hair that had fallen from his head. And he was thunderstruck. He said, "Oh my gosh, I've wasted all this time, and I've never sat at the foot of the guru to learn his teachings." And his guru raced out to him with his hand like this and said, "Please, don't cry. It would be a terrible disaster if the tear of such a saint hit the ground." So there it is. That's how we arrive at understanding, through dedicating ourselves to what has been asked of us, saying yes to life. This can be applied in many very practical ways. Dr. Peter, who is a doctor who established a practice right outside Ananda Village, he's a devotee, and out of medical school, he established this rural clinic, which has been very, very successful. And he told a story about a patient, and he said, "I saw that patient probably 10 times in 30 years, and I would give him a prescription, and then I wouldn't see him for a long time. And this went on for a good number of years. He'd come back, I'd give him the same prescription, we'd have a little talk, and then I wouldn't see him. And finally, after this had been going on for quite a while, the patient confessed. He said, "Doc, I thought you'd be mad at me, but here's what happens. I come into the clinic and I feel so good talking to you. I take the piece of paper home. I lose track of it. I never take it into the pharmacy. Then I see it somewhere. I just throw it away." And that's what's been going on. "I thought you'd be mad at me." No, Dr. Peter really understood what was going on. The man was picking up the healing vibration that he felt from the doctor. That was better than anything. I know I told this story before, but it's relevant because it's so in a way, it's so grounded in the society we live in today. This is a story from L.A., and it's a man and his daughter were driving, and they were the victims of a drive-by shooting. So the wife was killed. The wife was killed. The daughter was killed. The man took a couple of bullets, but suddenly he felt his mother calling to him, and she had passed away a long time ago. He turned because he felt the energy coming from the back seat. He turned and took a bullet, not in the heart, but somewhere else. And so when it came time for a trial, the lawyers, he said, he knew it was God's way of helping out. He knew it was God's call for him to turn, and he saw his mother in vision. And the lawyers, of course, said, "You can't say anything about that. We don't want you to say anything about that experience." And he just, "Yes, sir." Okay, so he got on the stand and he told of the experience. I mean, just right out in front. And they said, "Why did you do that?" Well, the thing is, it was a true experience. And the jury knew it. They felt it. They received it from him. But the lawyers were still like, "What did you do?" And he said to them, "I might as well have been killed if I had denied God." So there it is again, that experience over the logic, say, of the law, the logic of whoever it is that just doesn't understand that there's always another dimension if our eyes are open, if our hearts are open to receive it. And then, well, I have a lot of stories here, but I think I'll tell this one. There was a king. He was opening to a different kind of understanding of what his job was and what he should be doing for his kingdom. And he decided he really didn't want to live amongst all this wealth, and amongst the wealth there was lots of great art, so there was also lots of beauty. But anyway, he decided that he would share it with his kingdom. And so he had kind of like an open house at the palace. And anyone could take anything, and any number of anythings. It was open house, take what you wish. I want to share this with you. So people came, they had a wonderful time, they made a lot of choices. And at the end, the king realized that there was this little girl standing next to him. And he said, "Well, you have to go choose something." And she looked up at him and she said, she opened her hands like this and she said, "I choose you, my king." Thank you.